what a privilege it is for us, for me to be here, for us to be here, to be invited by Colin Boston. So I met Colin Boston. I met Reverend Boston because a congregant of CSK, who's also a congregant of FIRSTUU, who's sitting in the second row right here, Craig Ottinger, called me up and he said, or maybe he emailed me or texted me, he said, hey, I want to introduce you to Reverend Boston. He's new to our Unitarian Universalist church where I'm a member. I've been a member for a long time. And I said, sure, that'd be great. And I said, let's set it up. He said, yeah, I want to talk to you. I want to get you to connect with him because the Reverend wants his son to have a bar mitzvah. And I was like, okay. That's not a request you get every day. Well, when I met Reverend Boston, I said, so you're Jewish? And he said, yes, I was born Jewish. And I said, so were you raised Jewish? He said, I was raised more communist. So I thought, all right, excellent. We're going to get along well. Now, I'm not at all convinced that Asa knew what he meant when he said he wanted to become a bar mitzvah, because there was a lot more Hebrew than I think Asa had expected to learn. But we got going on that journey. It was fantastic. He learned quickly. And then, of course, COVID happened. So Asa was one of our Zoom mitzvahs. We had 7 during the year 2021. And we did it right from this spot in here. There were all of 5 or 6 of us, whatever. And it was terrific. But I love and appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak. What I'm going to do is kind of curate for you what I'm calling a mini Rosh Hashanah experience. But what I thought I would do first is share with you a story that I think encapsulates a very Jewish view of the world and of life. From the time that Adam and Eve are exiled from the Garden of Eden, they live together east of Eden, tilling the earth and raising children and struggling to stay alive. After those many years of struggle, when their children are grown, Adam and Eve decide to take a journey before it's too late and see the world that God had created. They journey from one corner of the world to the other, and they explore all of the world's wonders. They stand upon the great mountains, they trek across the vast deserts, they walk amid the mighty forests and traverse the magnificent seas. They watch the sunrise over the endless wilderness and the sun set into the boundless ocean. All that God created, they behold. In the course of their journeys, wandering from place to place, they come upon a place that seems rather familiar. They come upon the Garden of Eden, from which they had been exiled on the very first day of their lives. The garden is still guarded by an angel with a flaming sword. This angel frightens Adam and Eve, and they flee. But suddenly, they hear a voice, a gentle, imploring voice. God speaks to them, "My children, you have lived in exile these many, many years. Your punishment is complete. Come now and return to my garden. Come home to the garden." Suddenly the angels disappear. The way into the garden opens, and God invites them in. But Adam, having spent so many years in the world, he hesitates and he says to God, it has been so many years. Remind me, what's it like in the garden? The garden is paradise, God gleefully responds. In the garden, there's no work. You need never struggle or toil again. In the garden, there is no pain, no suffering. In the garden, there is no death. There is no time. No yesterday, no tomorrow. Only an endless today. Come, my children, return to the garden. Adam considers God's words. He thinks about a life with no work, no struggle, no pain, no passage of time. And Eve begins to think as well. A world with no death. An endless life of ease with no tomorrow and no yesterday. And they turn towards each other. And they look into each other's eyes. The people with whom they have struggled to make a life. To take bread from the earth, to raise children, to build a home. And they see the lines in each other's faces. All the tragedies they have overcome. And the joys they have cherished. They see in each other's eyes all the laughter and all the tears they've shared. And they look towards God. And they look back towards each other. And then they say, no, thank you, God. It's not for us. Not now. We don't need that now. Come on, Eve says. Let's go home. And Adam and Eve turn their backs on God's paradise. And they walk home. The Torah is filled with stories that I believe in our tradition seems to support the notion that the text was written purposefully with a great lack of clarity, with a lot of questions that are demanded from the text. The Torah text was never meant to be an official statement of the truth with a capital T. If we study Torah and we don't walk away from the study with more questions than answers, we haven't done Torah study right. Because at the end of the day, Torah study is really about self-discovery. And Judaism is a tradition that affirms and embraces the notion that the world and the life that we have right here is the most real one there is. That there isn't a better place. Now, we don't turn down the possibility that maybe there's some world beyond this one. Jewish tradition speaks plenty of Olam Haba, the world to come. But it's maybe something that comes. It's not something that's meant to be the yield on our investment. That the most important part of what Judaism is about our lives is that this is what we got. This is what we have. And at least as far as Judaism is concerned, no one has yet gone there and come back to affirm that it's there. Therefore, I guess in Judaism, we play the odds. Or at least we play with what we have here. So there are two prayers that are central, two of the prayers that are central to the High Holy Days. One is called Avinu Malkeinu, and one is called Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu is a prayer by which we primarily ask God to write us into the book of life for the year to come. Is that something that we know happens? Well, God willing, we're here next year. But we don't offer people slips of paper when they leave the synagogue to let them know whether they're in or out. We don't know. But change the prayerful word that we say, God, please, katvenu, write us into the book of life. And you just change the vowels a little bit to katavnu. which is the first person plural past tense. We turn it into a question. Not, God, please write us into the book of life, but rather, have we written ourselves into the book of life and goodness? So I invite Hannah to share with us Avinu Malkeinu. And I invite you to ask yourselves the question, how have I written myself into the book of life this past year, and will seek to do so in the year to come?
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu,
our congregation is called Shema Kolenu, which means hear our voice. We are a congregation that 10 years ago started with the desire, the notion, the prayer that we would be able to set up Judaism in a different format in our society, to be less burdened by the heavy financial constraints of owning a building, and also of the membership model that had been the most common one, that felt to a certain extent like it was undermining people's ability to have their voice heard. And so Shema Kolenu, which you heard Hannah say several times in the Avinu Malkeinu prayer, is a plea. It's, God, please hear our voice. Congregation Shema Kolenu is a prayer, is a congregation that seeks to raise up our voices, individually and collectively. So I invite now Hannah once again to now share with us Shema Kolenu, the central prayer of Yom Kippur, by which we seek God's grace in our lives and in the mystery of our existence.
Shema Aleinu,
A young rabbi is making her rounds at the senior home. Tell me, she looks down at her note card, Mrs. Schwartz, tell me about your life. Well, you wouldn't believe it, Rabbi. I have had a very good life. I lost Murray a few years back, but I have wonderful grandchildren and children, and I'm feeling pretty good for an 88-year-old. That is so wonderful, Mrs. Schwartz. You should live 32 more years to the age of 120. Ad mea ve'esrim, like Moses, our teacher. She knocks on the next door, glances down at the note card. Mr. Goldberg, I am the new rabbi here, and I want to meet you. Tell me about your life. I have had a good life. At one time, I wrote for the newspaper. I've traveled and met many important people. And Rabbi, I am 94 years old. That is fabulous, said the rabbi. You should live 26 more years. Bis 120. In Yiddish. To 120 and be strong like Moses, our teacher. The next door, knock, knock. Mrs. Levy, how nice to meet you. Tell me about your life. Oh, Rabbi, I've seen so much change, so many things. Where do I begin? And you wouldn't believe it. Tomorrow is my birthday. I will be 120 years old. The rabbi interrupts and says, Mrs. Levy, have a nice day. In Jewish tradition, we want life. We want as much life as we can get, but as we say, we don't push it. So 120 seems to be a good marker. Moses lived to 120 according to the Torah, and this is our hope, this is our wish. But really, it's this humble recognition that we have this life. This is it. And we are charged to do with it what we will seek to do to make the world better than when we arrived. I invite up Leo Hernandez to sound the shofar for us once again and invite this shofar in to your hearts as I look for the slide. That's okay. Here we go. Tekiah. Shevarim Trua. Tekiah. Tekiah. Teruah. Tekiah Gedolah.